Hi everybody. On this episode, I talked to Rob Brady about why long-term nurturing is so important for an estate agency and how estate agents go about winning business at the moment, how they go about winning business, and how Rob has seen that change from his time as an estate agent to working inside Iceberg and working with hundreds of estate agents across the country. Hope you enjoy it. On this episode, I wanted to try to dig into some of the ways that you've seen a difference between when you were an estate agent and the way that you were taught to generate new business and how to get new instructions and all of that sort of stuff, versus perhaps coming out of that industry and working in a completely different sector, if you like, with a different idea on how to win business, and just the sort of maybe the learnings that you've discovered over that period of time, good and bad, as to like how to win new business and, you know, avoid that trap of the peaks and troughs of, oh, we've got loads of business, we've got no business, we've got loads of business, we've got no business. So I guess my first question is, when you was in a estate agency, what is the normal traditional way of someone going, right, this is how we're going to get new business?
How far do you want to go back? As I came out of agency, part of the journey of coming, obviously an Iceberg client originally, we'd gone into more digital lead generation and looking at it, but we were still very much on the early adoption stage of that. Coming away from that, it was like a complete polar opposite to how things were done. And they were like that for 15 years of me being in agency. So,
like what? They were like what?
Like you said, it was like peaks and troughs. So you can have a really busy month. You don't really, truth be honest, you don't really know where that came from. It's just like, oh, spring's coming. Let's hope the market's going to pick up and people are going to move and we get some business in. And then, so you had that. But in quieter times, you would just, we spent thousands and thousands on leaflet drops a month. Right. And you'd get them delivered by the pallet to your office, and you just leaflet drop, and you'd obsess about for the first month probably before it happens of what the design might be, if someone's going to call to action, whether this little button here and the number and the website and what it says and the artwork and all sorts of stuff. And then obviously now I realise I have to go back to how I receive leaflets and just chuck them in the bin. So there was the waste of time designing it, 2, having these massive boxes delivered, 3, organising someone cheap to try and deliver them, if they do deliver them, or they just throw them in a bin down the road, and trying to track that. But then you're still stuck with the hope, right? There's no if they read it, did they read it? The hope that there's someone comes in from it, and then the only way you really then start to look at it is you go, okay, if the main roads, we do this offer down the main roads, and if they scan this and say they got a leaflet, we'll be doing 1%. And then that's how you track it. So you'd be like, I'd be discounting our fee just to see whether actually this process works.
Right.
So we'd be doing that, but then desperate times would be a case of door knocking. And you'd drive in a car, you'd itemise what other properties are out on the market. You go around there with a pack, knock on the door. 9 times out of 10, people at work, because the properties that we were trying to find had to work to obviously own that property, and then you would just hope again for hoping that they'd call with no real measure to see whether they're doing anything. Right.
So it's very much in the now.
Yeah.
I need a listing now. If I deliver all of these leaflets, it might just land in front of that person. And you know, we're not knocking leaflets, it may well land in front of that right person. But you know, once the leaflet drop is kind of done, then that's it, isn't it? So, and the same with the door knocking. We can go around, we might get a listing today, and that'll be brilliant, and it'll give everyone a lift, we'll have a new house to sell, but it won't have any effect with tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then coming out of estate agency and working at Iceberg, what was the main differences you saw, and you know, the sort of way that your thinking on it changed?
In that transition of coming out, but then becoming an Iceberg client originally, and then I remember I used to meet at the 8 Club, I read your first book. I remember buying 2 more copies for the owners of the business and said, like, as a director, we're going to be going down this route. So you're going to probably think I'm crazy because this is all foreign to you. And somewhere down the line, you're going to have to go, what are we even spending this money on? Like, we're not getting anything off it yet.
There's no physical leaflets in the back office anymore.
And then it's working at an allocation of money from other resources to invest in stuff like this, and not expecting like you said, like a leaflet drop. You go, oh, we've got a listing from that. Not expecting that we're going to invest into Facebook ads and what we're going to get from it. So I started to have an education in that, meeting up with you and being a part of that, because I then started to understand 7-11-4, like the psychology of it, what you're trying to do, how marketing works, and really, because at the time we were only just trying to find people who were just wanted to sell now, not actually who's ready to be marketed to. And then obviously coming to Iceberg, and then even in the early platform, and being able to see people, track people, see what lead generation efforts we're doing, content being put in front of those people, how we actually have a content strategy. It was completely a whole new world to me, because it's just something that I never even did in any of the industries I've ever been in before. So what it made me realise is having that whole longer term strategy. Yes, you've got the short term strategy. Yes, you might still need to do leaflet drops, but ultimately, if you never plan for that future and try and capture people and influence them, you're always going to be stood on the edge of a cliff, hoping that there's going to be another couple of steps to stop you going over.
Yeah, because I mean, from the outside, and I might be wrong, but from the outside, it seems like a lot of estate agents, what they would class as prospecting, if you like, is based around the idea that another agent's going to fuck things up. Someone else has done the work of getting the house on the market, and if they fuck it up, we can get it, based around door knocking or sending leaflets to other people's properties, or basically a property comes up on their radar when another agent's got it on the market, and if that agent does a good job, their opportunities are going to be pretty limited. Fortunately for them, the bar's quite low, and a lot of agents do a bad job, and so therefore they can step in at the second point. Would you say like agents are conscious of the fact that is a risky strategy, because if agents do a good job, they won't get their foot in the door? I just don't really think about it.
I think it's some strategy, but it comes back to that whole, like, you're still dealing with a transactional, it's not really marketing.
No, sales.
Because someone's already sale ready and they've already been sold to, and you're just trying to, the strategies are always going to be risky, because yes, in tougher markets, there's more stock available out to it, but the cost to acquire that person, there's multiple factors you're relying on. Bad agent, overpriced, photos, contract lengths. So there's loads of things that you can only influence depending on the factors of that. Whereas if you invest probably the time and resources within that to acquiring that customer before they've even gone to the market with an agent, it is a longer term strategy, but you have the ability to influence people. And actually allow them to make a decision. But in that other time, what you were trying to do is say, they're bad, we're good. And that's, you're purely reliant, like you said, on an agent underperforming and hoping that you could be that second agent in the door. But again, if you've got 5 or 6, 7 agents in your area doing exactly the same thing, I saw one only posted last week, someone put like a big wedge of leaflets and letters that come through the door from agents who had just gone to the market with this. He put a property on the market within 2 weeks, and he said, like, the agent said, like, is this all we've got as an industry, to just tout the crap out of people's properties? Like, again, like, what selection did that happen? Like, how, even if you're doing that, how do you influence someone to make a decision on whether your letter's better than that person's letter? Yeah,
that's interesting. Okay, and then obviously, as I was saying before, like, so you changed the way. Actually, just going back there, like, one of the frustrations that I always found when I talk to agents and they talk about maybe leaflets or letters versus, I don't know, Facebook or Google ads. You mentioned right at the beginning, like, you'd regularly spend thousands of pounds getting these leaflets printed and then delivered. And when you said to the company, right, we're going to start doing Facebook ads, let's say, Did they put thousands of pounds into that, or did they put
No.
like a tenner in and go, that doesn't seem to work?
Yeah, and it was a trial because it would be right. We're going to do Facebook advertising for a week and let's see how we get on.
Yeah.
Oh, if you get anything from that, we'll turn it off.
You can have £20.
Yeah, so I mean, the analysis is that how I worked it was like, right, this is our marketing budget we worked out, and then just to try and help analyse it, I actually took sources off Rightmove, like optimizer package. I looked at the click spend on that and I thought I could probably save about £1,000 on that. Take that away from that. Downgraded Zoopla, removed on the market. Then looked at how we're doing leaflets and whether we need to do particular leaflets and the designs and all the cost element to it. So I reallocated resources that we were already spending elsewhere to start trialing it and investing in it. Because if you did £1,000 on Facebook and you did £1,000 on leaflets, like what's the difference? Like you can't turn around and say leaflets were good because you might get a listing, but really was the leaflet the influence, or was it at the time that person was coming to the point where you just landed when they were deciding to sell? It wasn't an influence of marketing. It was just they were just coming to the market at that point.
Yeah, it's tricky because like I think, not always, but traditionally, like over time, you send out leaflets and letters, you do end up feeling like they work better because of the fact that it, like you said before, it's sales, not marketing. If it has any effect whatsoever, it will be a valuation or an instruction. Like otherwise you won't know anything about it. So therefore in your mind the drop was either successful or unsuccessful, and quite often they're seen as successful because it's like, well, it did work because we've got a listing. And then if you ran a Facebook ad for a month and let's say for instance you generated, I don't know, 100 instant valuations, but you didn't actually get a listing, that would be seen as a failure. And I guess that's the bit where I wanted to move on to, was like, so that seems pretty black and white for most agents. Even me saying that, they would say, yeah, that is a failure. Why do I want 100 instant shit leads, instant valuations? What's the point? Versus, I've done this and I've got a listing. You must be mad. I would do the leaflets every time. So where has that thinking maybe changed in your mind over time, if it even has?
Being able to track instant valuations or lead generation of some sort, especially in like life cycle, because we've got, we had clients who we adopted from the original platform into life cycle, so we've seen people's journeys now. I only had one a couple of months ago where it was like a 25-month journey, and that agent did get instructed on it. It's like £7.5 fee, but if you looked at from the instant valuation coming in, they did nothing for 6 months. And then they read a bit of a newsletter and then they buggered off. But it was only like the following year you could start to see that was the year they wanted to move, so you could start to see the engagement within it. But if you had just done a research and analysis in the first 6 months of our efforts, that's pointless.
Should bin it all off.
Should bin it all off. So you have to have, if you're in that moment now where you're doing leaflets, you're doing letters, and you're doing that sort of side to it, you have to acknowledge that is a short-term strategy. Like you might have done it for a longer period of time and think, okay, we send enough letters and enough leaflets out to people's doors, someone will move. But I don't think it's the influence of the letters. It's their journey is not ready, and then the letter might drop through. So you might only do one letter into that door, but because they're ready to move, would be the same result as in 6 letters coming to that door, because it's still the 6th one is that when they time they want to move. You can't influence it anymore. So it's always going to be a short-term strategy, whereas longer-term strategy is your digital front, and you can influence people more with that.
So it's not a case necessarily of not doing the letters and leaflets. Like it's fine. If you need a listing today, why not? But are you saying that but you also need to have some sort of strategy in the longer term to make sure that you're not just on this hamster wheel going round and round and round of we said at the beginning, the peaks and troughs of we've got business, we won't do any letters and leaflets. We haven't got any business, we will, and let's just keep doing that forever. Or the long-term effect of that guy or girl who had the £7,000 instruction after 24 months, even if it's just 0.5% better than where she was, she's slowly improving this idea of peaks and troughs, because by default, if she's got lots and lots of leads coming in and they're going into a system that does some form of communication and nurturing, as opposed to just her estate agency software whereby she's going to archive them, inevitably she's going to be communicating with more people regularly without doing anything. As her content goes out and her newsletters go out and all of that sort of stuff, she's going to end up with the short-term stuff and the long-term stuff.
It's a bit like, it sounds a bit morbid, going to war, like traditional, like World War II. You're either going to be in the trenches, just trying to fight it on that no man's land, battling out there with your enemy, which is effectively your other agent's competition, or you could be at the back line thinking about a strategic way of breaking the defences and working out how you can break through the lines. Like if you're stuck in the trenches and you're just fighting, like there's no time to sit back and look at the strategy side to it. Whereas if you can take a step back and go, right, that's a bit weaker over there and we can break through that part. And that's where short-term marketing is always going to be short-term marketing, but long-term marketing becomes short-term marketing over a period of time, because you have enough in the conveyor belt starting to come through that long-term stuff becomes short-term.
Yeah, the guys in the back of out the back of the war zone have developed a laser.
Yeah.
And they roll that out to the front and it's all over all of a sudden. But do you think it's that way specifically because of the software that estate agents use is all based around, if there's no transaction to be done now, then there isn't anything for me to do with this person.
Yeah.
I get an instant valuation, for instance. Of course, the immediate thing that any agent does is try to contact that person. And lo and behold, they don't want an actual valuation.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise, right? I mean, but there's no other option for most estate agents, is there? They can't not phone them and they'd say, well, what do you want? What are you expecting me to do with this person? Do you think that that's, we've got an industry whereby most people are using softwares that were created or at least conceived before things like the iPhone, before social media, maybe not before the internet, but certainly before the internet as it is today. And they're using these softwares whereby, this is great. I can book viewings, I can manage my diary, I can do sales progression, I can do property management, I can do anything as long as the person wants to do a transaction now.
Yeah.
But if you did the sort of marketing that exists in today's world, which everybody is aware of, like content marketing or, gathering leads through ebooks or instant valuations or all of that kind of stuff, that software is kind of pointless. And so therefore, do you think that influences the agent's mind as to go, these leads are just shit?
Yeah, because it's the mindset, isn't it? Because you're applying a practice for short-term marketing you're trying to apply the same practice for a different type of marketing. So like if you're doing it short-term, you're doing the leaflets, your mindset is, okay, just trying to win the business now. And if you're trying to apply that to a longer-term market, it's never going to work. So you have to shift your mind to thinking, okay, like you said, like going back to how I traditionally worked, like we have a CRM, we had a marketing system, which I just didn't get on before we came across. That didn't give you any insights because trying to get the team to log into that and then log into this one and log into this one. That's the whole concept of why we exist today. So the CRM then literally was like you'd get an instant valuation in, but we weren't educated enough then. It was quite early on going, I'm going to call that person because that's a lead. Like they want to sell now. But like I always say to a lot of our clients, like when you start to, how well do you get on with them calling people? Most people come to the conclusion like most people don't want to call. And I go, okay, just think about like you being in the shoes of that customer. You get interrupted on Facebook saying 60 seconds valuation. Like there's no consideration. If I was more considerate, I'd be calling the agent up saying I want a valuation. So you get that, and then within 5 minutes you get a call going, do you want a valuation? You come round, no, I'm not yet ready because I'm just curious because I just did a 60-second, and I'll call you next week. No, it's fine. No, I'll call you next week, and then it will turn so many people off. And yes, you go back to, you might get the one-off win, but how many people do you annoy in that process?
Yeah, how many people have gone to their mate and gone, oh, don't use one of them, bloody hell, I did it there, now they're hounding me to death.
And anything, like imagine if like you've done an ebook guide, you've ever done an insurance quote, and like a salesperson calls you up,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, I wish I'd never done it in the first place.
Like, Jesus.
Even when you go to fill something out, you sort of think, do I really want to do this?
So it has to be almost respect given back to the consumer.
Yeah, it's like giving without anything in return, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can do your instant valuation, but again, that comes back to the systems that are in place, doesn't it? Like, because if I've just got a transactional estate agency software where the process starts when someone wants to book a viewing or book a market appraisal, and I take an instant valuation tool as a separate lead generator, and I put that on the website, and I run my Facebook ads and Google ads, and we know for a fact that that is then going to generate instant valuations, and quite a lot of them. Okay, well, what are you expecting me to do with these people then? If I don't phone them up, just do nothing, and what good will that do?
Well, even in the last few years, like that the view is instant valuations are poor, people have overused them, everyone knows about them, but that's like a bias because someone's always going to be a select few people entering the market, and we'll see that the whole world doesn't know about it. It's only particular sets of people. Like if that was the case, if you live in a town and you've got 100,000 people, you'd have 100,000 instant valuations in your database. But I think previously, also before like sort of stuff with now the technology we've got available, the common perception was do an instant valuation, we'll put them in a a nurture journey, and that's going to win you all the business. And we're going to do it over a 12-month period. We're going to put content that's not even relevant in 6 months down the line.
Yeah, we'll nurture them for 4 months. After that, fuck them.
Yeah, and that's where, again, that whole short-term mindset comes to it, because if you look at the data and the average time it can take to convert an instant valuation, the average time Rightmove said it goes to the market, like Rightmove said, the decisions that people make is about 18 months away before they physically move. Instant valuations sit in about 9 months, and I think most, or 18% of instant valuations convert in the first 2 years. So like, they're not going to convert straight away. But if you believe in wanting to build up a steady flow of marketing leads that are coming in to convert, then you have to do your cost analysis to work out, we need to invest in something like this.
It's interesting because it comes back to something I was talking to an agent about the other day, where I was saying, like, we've got a few parts to our brain that have evolved over time that kind of differentiate us from animals, if you like. Most animals have got the whole fight or flight, and we've got that at the bottom of our brain. So if something first comes into our brain, it hits that part where you can make a split decision. So for instance, even things like, if I say to you, what's the capital city of France, it's almost impossible for you not to think of the word Paris. Even if I say don't think of the word Paris, it's even more impossible for you not to think of the word Paris. You've got these things that can happen in your brain whereby you don't have to think about it. Thinking fast, thinking slow. There's a great book about it. Putting your house on the market with an estate agent is probably more of a thinking slow decision, unless somehow you've done the work that's made it a thinking fast decision. And as I've spoken about before, Google did a fantastic piece of research about this, 2015, called the Zero Moment of Truth, whereby they looked at all of these people's browsing datas. They looked at 15 years worth of research to find out what's the journey that somebody actually goes on before they actually go ahead and buy something. And it turns out that somebody spends 7 hours, 11 touch points and 4 different locations, and then the brain puts them over into this special compartment whereby they now know, like, and trust that particular brand or product or service, which starts linking them to the think fast decisions, whereby suddenly somebody's like, well, need a new phone, what are you going to buy? iPhone. They answer it like, what's the capital city of Paris? Like, you'd be mad to even do research. And this is the bit that most estate agents, for some reason, that industry has missed out on that evolution. So coming out of a estate agency and stepping into a software business, into Iceberg, and seeing a company work that way must have been a even though you'd started to, you know, as you say, you'd started to research it at your estate agencies. So stepping into that world, and then obviously working with us for years and seeing the true fruition of that, people that, you know, we spoke to. I can remember in the very beginning, you came on to talk to agents about life. Well, it wasn't life cycle then, but Iceberg. And you'd get frustrated with people, and I'd be saying to you, "Don't worry, this all comes around in the end."
Yeah.
And you'd be like, "Yeah," but now you've actually been here long enough to see, like, shit. Yeah. That actually happens.
Even like people that unsubscribe, clients go, "Oh, they've unsubscribed." Go, check probably in about a year down the line, you'll probably realise that they've now back into the buying cycle and they've influenced
They see stuff on social media. Even if you unsubscribe from your emails, they're seeing stuff on social media. You run your ads, 7 hours for, you know, 11 different touch points, 4 different locations. And you know, leaflets and letters can work for that. People are always saying to me, "Oh, I know you're against, you know, leaflets and letters." I'm not against them. They're just a very expensive way of doing the 7-11-4 process. Yeah. You know, that's ultimately what you guys were doing when you were sending out those letters. You were still trying to 7-11-4 people, but Jesus, this is an expensive way of doing it. I'm going to have to do a shitload of letters that get noticed over a very long period of time, as opposed to me running Facebook ads, running Google ads, sending emails. Like, all of that stuff is going to be a hell of a lot cheaper for me in the long term than it will be to send letters and possibly, you know, annoy somebody because I've put it through their letterbox, as opposed to it just being something they saw when they were scrolling.
Yeah, I remember, like, one year we did leaflets, letters with Booster Property Market, and we had Booster chocolate bar in it. I think we had a load of complaints with people saying, "You almost killed my dog."
Right. Yeah.
A leaflet through the door and almost chewed on a Boost bar. But I think you're right in what you're saying, because a lot of people, when I start to coach, "Oh, you Iceberg Digital," I'm like, "Yeah, we're Iceberg Digital. We're digital." But I think if you take the perception on what you think, what we might believe, you're equally removing yourself from a whole different world of things that you could be doing if you just explored it a bit more and got someone in to educate you on how to do it yourself, or paid for the resources to achieve that. I think you would start to see a whole different arm of how you can start to influence people's decisions. And I can 100% say that, because I've been an agent. I worked in the front end of Iceberg with regards to the sales side to it and sort of how that marketing works. And now I coach agents, and I've seen last few years that even just putting CSV files into a platform and having them nurtured, like, we actually see the completion rates on them. So it's not hypothetical. You can see every person's journey, what they've done, what they've clicked on, how many times they've read this. So it's evident that that has influenced their decision.
And it's not magic. Everybody knows it works this way.
Yeah.
You know, you think about something you're thinking about buying, or a holiday you're thinking about going on, you know that you're going to go and look at a bit more content at some point. And eventually you're going to 7-11 for yourself, and then you're going to buy it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to make up some reason as to why you bought it. We all know that's exactly what we're going to do. We're just, at the moment, you're on the edge. You're like, I'm just not quite sure that I'm going to do that. But if you was to be honest with yourself, you are pretty sure you're going to do it. But it hasn't yet managed to make its way into the fully trusting part of your brain.
I think, like you said, if you really remove what you need from the customer right now, I need a listing, and look at them as human beings and their journeys, and everyone's different. I use the airport analogy, where, like, when someone comes to an airport, people are on 1-hour flights, they could be on 27-hour flights, they could be going away with their kids, they could be seeing family, they could be seeing friends, they could go skiing, So everyone's on a different journey, so you have to look at it as people arriving to your estate agency, people have come and are going on different journeys, but also come from, like, someone's a family, they've realised they need to get in particular schools. Like, that's not a quick decision. They don't go, "Do you know what, should we sell a house?" They'll be thinking, right, next spring we need to get moving, get it done, so that by the time the schools come through, we're in that catchment area. Or I need to get a new job, so I need to be near this train station, I need to relocate closer to that. They're not instant decisions. They're decisions where people sit down, they go on Rightmove, they research it, they look on Google, they read content, and that's where you can influence that. But if you're not even in that mix, you're still back on that I'm going to be one of 3 agents when someone calls up and does that part to it.
Yeah.
You need to be. What I always say to clients about is it's like little nudges of influence, so that you can influence someone's journey. So when they decide to move, you can't influence that they will move because that's their own journey. But you can influence when they decide to move, that whether they think of you or not.
Let's make it a fast decision rather
and
than
go, oh yeah, I know that agent. They're really good. I've seen them at stuff.
Well, like you say, you imagine that, like, you know, you're thinking, oh, we're probably gonna have to move when you know, little Grace gets to senior school because like I want to be in the catchment area for that school, but you know she's only sort of, you know, 8 at the moment, and I don't have to really worry about it. I do an instant valuation of my house. The agent phone says, "Do you want to sell?" I go, "No, I don't want to sell." And they phone me for a few weeks and blah 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 blah. And I basically go down as a waster in the estate agent's books. I end up in the archive, in the bin. But I am going to move. And I just think about the alternate reality whereby I did that, and also on that form, you know, there had been reasons for doing the instant valuations, and you know, thinking about relocating for schools and all of that sort of stuff. And just gradually over time, I'd been getting useful content about some of the things to think about if you're going to relocate for schools. Like, this is when you probably need to be letting the schools know. These are some of the things that you might want to do to make the change easier for your kids, and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't have to be written, I'm an estate agent and I'm going to teach you how to, like, you know, settle your children into a new school. You can get an expert to talk about it in your newsletter. But either way, I end up in the situation where I'm like, oh, I quite like the stuff that these people send. And you can already imagine in my brain the workings that are going on whereby that is starting to move down to being a fast decision when someone goes, right, should we put our house on the market then? Yeah, oh yeah, I know who to use.
I'll give you some great example. I've got a client who incorporated automation within videos as well, and she's been now with us a year, and I encouraged her to get on camera and start doing it, and she's just said, like, it's really interesting. She said, now I've got lead generation and people have been influenced, and I'll put in stuff in a newsletter, I've got adult content going out and stuff like that. And I'm regularly...
Adult? Did you say adult content?
Yeah, adult content. Yeah. Like, she said, I'm now walking through the door and people are like, oh, you've changed your hair colour. And she's like, okay, like, that's a bit weird.
Stalker.
And then she said, oh, what's this video that you did? And she said, like, all of a sudden, that's a whole different conversation, because she said, I'm genuinely not having anyone else around because, like, people are familiar with me.
Yeah.
And, like, but if you don't invest in that period of time, you're not in that influence circle. You're just in that short term on the shelf, hoping to.
We all have it. Like, you know, if I said, oh, you know, we've both got the same car. If you're going to have that serviced, you have to use this guy, right? And if you trust me, that trust transference goes over to that guy. You're not going to shop around unless there's some specific reason that guy fucks it up. So if she's done that work, or any agent has done that work using the, you know, the hypothetical situation I was talking about before, and I go, oh yeah, I know the agent to use, that's it, I'm done. Like, people don't want to mess around. Like, they only do it because they don't know who to choose. Like, you don't stand out any more than any of the others. So I don't know, I better get 3 round then and ask them how much they charge, and hopefully I can make some sort of logical decision and not look like I've just, you know, if it all goes wrong, I can at least say, well, I got 3 round, but with this situation, I can go like, oh, I think I know the person. I think I know the person to use. So the agents that do that, because the industry's somehow missed that evolution that's been going on for over 10 years in other industries, they can still get quite a long way ahead of the competition. By now, what should have happened, you know, there aren't other industries really that are doing leaflets and letters. It's not a thing, unless you're talking about like someone who's delivering a 2-for-1 pizza thing. But even that is still not that effective.
You still go on Just Eat and look at...
Exactly, it's moving. But other industries, like, you talk to any proper industry and say, oh yeah, you know, we'll get our business sending out letters and leaflets. Just think you were mad. So you could still get quite far ahead. And what happens is that the people that do that end up with very large databases of people that they're constantly communicating with, that they're constantly 7-11-4 in, that they're starting to become a quick decision for. And then the people that are doing letters and leaflets, it dies because it doesn't work anymore, and they go, shit, we better get on and do what they've done. But it's too late now.
Yeah.
Because they've already found an agent. They don't have, this isn't a problem for them anymore. So if you do that process, it's yours to fuck up, really. And I guess, like, you know, going back to the start of the podcast, that was, I just thought it'd be quite interesting talking to you, somebody who's been in a estate agency, that's been in we need to get something on this whiteboard. There's a number 11 on the board, and at the moment there's a 4 next to it, and I need it to say 11 by the end of the month. So what are we doing? And that's a job. We're not saying you shouldn't be doing that, but you should be doing something to make that easier over time, rather than just like, right, let's try and steal next door's stock.
I think like just that, it just comes back to how much you want to commit to try and influence your market.
Yeah.
And investing in that part to it. Like you said, like simple things. If you're sitting there in an agency right now and you're looking at your systems you've got in place, and you might have 300-400 applicants you're servicing right now, but you've got 10,000 people in an archive database, like you need to seriously go, why are we doing leaflets when we've got 10,000 people that we can communicate with?
Are coming out of that database. I can pretty much guarantee it.
And as much as people say they call out a database and they do all that sort of side to it, like I challenged someone a year or 2 years ago about this, and he said, like, he calls up everyone in a database, and I said, like, how many calls do you make a day? And he was like, 15. I was like, okay, so you've got 10,000 people. So how long does that take you to, because you say you speak to everyone every year, like, you're only going to speak to one person one time, 5 minutes if you're lucky. That ain't even going to reach your 10,000. So what influence are you going to have in that phone call?
And even the phone call's not marketing, the phone call's sales.
Yeah.
I'm not moving myself, I'm not 7-11-4 them by just phoning up every week going, like, any further news on this?
You want to say
that guy that, you know, did the instant valuation because his daughter's going to move schools, as if he wants a call every year. He's just going to block your number.
Yeah.
You're just going to piss him off. If anything, and there's another agent who's just letting it take its own course, but making sure that he's always seeing relevant stuff. It's just it's just the way we're wired. It's a psychological thing. We all know that's how it works. But an agent will happily spend a couple of £1,000s on a leaflet drop, but not spend, you know, an extra 500 quid on a piece of software that's going to look after those 10,000 people and make sure that they get more business in the long run. Brilliant. Hope you enjoyed the episode.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.